Perfect. Hey, dads, mums, whoever's listening, morning, afternoon, late at night, driving the car. There won't be any meditation in this episode because we've got a real treat for you today with Ian Dinwiddie. The truth is, we might go into some meditation, but we don't intend to. So if you're driving, that's okay. This is a good episode to listen to. Ian was actually recommended to me because Ian runs and promotes and creates a beautiful podcast called Lockdown Dads, and somebody suggested that him and I get together because we look at the world in a very similar way. Heart for dads, heart for stressed dads, heart for dads that want more loving parenting, more time with the kids, more loving husbands, partners, and just becoming happier people. So we were introduced together. And before I let him loose on us, so Ian predominantly for not a full-time parent. Ian, are you about half and half, or are you the primary parent?
Primary parent, school-run dad is how I like to.
School-run dad, yes, perfect.
Yeah.
So Ian was a management consultant before his daughter was born. He then spent 7 years combining freelance work with being a primary carer to his two kids. Yeah, and he's a full-time stay-at-home dad, and he founded Inspiring Dads in 2018. So this is going to be real fun. We've got some cool topics for you guys here. And Ian, let's just hand over to you, buddy. Could you give us a whistle stop of how you got here? Where are you in the country? And just hand over to you for a minute.
Ben, hi. Thanks for inviting me on. It's a real pleasure. I think, yeah, like you say, got some good topics to talk about, and it really resonates with me, that whole sort of stressed dads and supporting them, and dads who want more, want to be more active, don't want to sacrifice their career, those kind of things. And like you said in the intro, then I was a management consultant for about 7 or 8 years, and then shortly before our daughter was born, Freya was born in 2010. Actually, we did some planning, my wife and I. We worked out that the way we wanted to sort of construct our life post Freya arriving was that one of us would need to stop work for a certain amount of time, because we didn't want to use nursery all the time. We didn't have grandparents nearby. We needed to be a bit more creative, and consultancy, although it's well paid, actually not as well paid as my wife's law career. And also I was having to work away from home a lot. And so what we decided to do was that I would go 4 days a week at work. That went really well. We had a bit of a transition. And then when my wife's maternity leave, when the money dropped off a cliff, we took a bit of holiday, and then it was full-time daddy daycare. So I was full-time parent with a 6-month-old for the first time. And I got to say, Ben, it's a bit of a shock. It always was a shock. It took me ages to get my head around the identity element of it, who I was. I was a management consultant. Yeah, this baby, yeah, you can't see the baby. I'm a management consultant. I had this kind of real vibe where it was a real challenge. And then later on, when I was looking to develop my career or work out what I could do sort of on a longer term basis, did some freelance work with my old, the firms I used to work with, some consultancy work on a kind of 2 or 3 day a week basis, so really flexible work. And that was really great on a day rate, but it's not sustainable. And I was looking for something to be sustainable. My wife was being coached, and she said, this coaching stuff, it seems a lot like the sort of things you really enjoyed from consultancy. It's talking to people, it's listening, it's helping them to solve their own problems and their own challenges within a business environment. Maybe there's something in it. And it turned out I knew coaches, and I chatted to them. I had coffee with a couple of people, realized actually it was a really good fit, sort of behaviorally, things I enjoyed. And so I went for it, and I did a coaching qualification. And then it was a case of, right, let's try and make some money out of this, and let's work out who I'm going to coach. Who do I want to coach? And I started off with parents, and I realized my real sweet spot was around helping dads who were torn in different directions between their work persona, their desire to be an active and involved father, but also time for themselves, time with their wife, their partner. And actually they were being drawn in different directions, and they were finding it really stressful. And I'd been through that to a certain extent in a different way. And I wanted to help that sort of next generation of guys coming through, becoming dads for the first time, going, how do I do this? Not how do I change nappies, but how do I navigate the kind of complexity of sort of modern life, and still have a great career and be a hands-on active dad, maybe the kind of dad they don't remember growing up. And so that became my motivation and my why, and how I ended up creating Inspiring Dads. Although my wife takes all the credit for the name, because the ID is Ian Dinwiddie, and we were looking for something that tied into my initials, and she came up with Inspiring Dads. So thank you, Lisa.
Well, if you've got anything like the marriage I have, Ian, Kerry is responsible for everything, and she takes the credit for everything, and that's the way it is. Duh, like hello. So let's just tune into and drill down into a bit in some of the things you shared, Ian, because just in that whistle stop, there were some really important moments. And before we do, what was the life experience you had as a kid? What was the role of your father? How hands-on was he? What is any of that reflecting in how life is for you now?
Yeah, I don't think I really realized how much it probably did influence the type of dad that I wanted to be, because unlike a lot of the clients I work with, my dad was around quite a lot. He was, and there's two factors involved in that. He was a chartered surveyor, so his job was to drive around Somerset in his company car with a car phone. Kid you not, when car phones were a real thing, car phone warehouse.
Very cool. Yeah,
very cool. Exactly. This, it's stuck in behind the handbrake, all the right. Vauxhall, some kind of Vauxhall. It was a Cavalier. I can't remember. The one after the Cavalier. Anyway, he had one of those. He probably had several, but So he was driving around, and what he used to do, certainly when we were in our teens, was that he would flex his work pattern so he could turn up and watch us play sport, my brother and I. And so he'd turn up at Bruton, or I don't know, somewhere on Exmoor, all these kind of Sherborne or wherever it was, Clifton. No, maybe Clifton was better out of the way. But anyway, he would turn up Kingswood. There's a place near you, I think, near Bath.
That's where I grew up, buddy.
Is it Kingswood?
That's my stomping ground, mate.
Yeah, so he would arrange his life, his working life, to fit around, coming and supporting us, which is in a way, it's a very masculine thing. It's going to support my boys doing sport. But he was also hands-on and heavily involved. We, as a family, we had 2 allotments, so we were always like getting our hands dirty, and as a family growing things. It was a bit kind of good lifey in some ways, but without the animals. And then when I was about 11, then our mum was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she went downhill quite quickly. And so as a family of us 3 men in the house, or 2 younger men, then we had to be very much more involved. There wasn't space for us just to rely on mum to do things, because she couldn't. We had to do things for her. And I think in some ways that's certainly a big part of kind of, I guess, the equality starting at home piece, which I think is really, really important part of sort of supporting dads to be great dads. It's not just about being a hero for your kids. It's about it's about understanding what equality means in the household, and how that supports bigger family goals, and certainly your partner's ambitions as well, and work ambitions. I think that's a really important thing to understand. So I think in hindsight it made a big difference, but I wouldn't have said growing up that I had this great sort of mission or anything like that. I think it's one of those things you look back and say, actually, this all kind of makes sense. It flows.
Yes, and let's make sure we revisit that equality in the home piece, because the old outdated model of dad at the front, out earning the money, mum doing everything at home. And even though I think that old model is just ridiculous, I can still find myself falling into that and wanting to be that kind of leader. And it's all on Ben Lepier, and he's doing it all, holding it together, which Kerry just rolls her eyes at, because she knows the truth. But let's come back to that, Ian. So before we go into other dads as well, let's just keep on you for a moment. Stress in your life. What have been your personal experience with stressful events or stress experiences in the body, would you say?
I guess not so. I guess that sort of underlying stress around looking after my mum when she'd had MS. So that was just like an undercurrent, I guess. I've always been someone, and it kind of will come up in the parenting principles bit that I think we want to talk about as well. I've always been someone who believed in doing things early and doing and persevering with work or whatever it might be, and getting the behaviors right and persevering will lead to success in some form or other. There are other elements. I mean, it's not just about working hard is the answer. But so throughout academically, I was never amazing academically, but I finished at university. I finished my dissertation 2 weeks early, which people thought was insane. And so I had 2 weeks, and I still made a typo on the front page, though. Left the letter A out on the front page. Didn't notice until 2 years later. But so I didn't get stressed about those kind of things. I guess sometimes it's about the overwhelm. It's like there's too many things and what to do first. I think that's where sort of personal levels of stress come from. I can be a snappy dad. I've got a lot better at breathing and understanding where I might snap. Certainly my son is, we still have debates about whether Dad's too snappy and stressy daddy and shouty daddy. And I think, and what I've found is that often it builds up and I'll be distracted by something else, and then something will happen and I'll get triggered by it. And actually often it's about the fact that I'm not present in the moment. I'm thinking about something else, or I'm reading something on my phone, and suddenly kids have been bickering away. And actually, if I were paying more attention, I might be like, okay, I'm just going to roll with this a little bit, so I'm not going to get stressed. So I guess those are sort of the two of the main things, I guess, for me.
Yeah, and I think I look at things very similarly, because I got to be honest. Although I help people with emotional work, I'm my world's worst piece of help, if that makes any sense. And I'm the last to know, and the telltale signs in the home, which are really helpful, are the looks on the faces of Kerry and Florence Needham and Willow even. And that's I'd like to say it never gets to that point, but eventually it starts to confuse me that I'm putting myself under stress, or I'm not coping well with the situation, and I haven't clocked it yet, but the look on their faces says, you actually look really scary, And of course they wouldn't stop and say that, because they're kids and they're just terrified too. So yes, we have to create space for them to do that. But how that shows up is they're misbehaving a bit more, or not listening a bit more, or being absent, or just being a bit more bickery with each other. And a parent who hasn't been educated in this way would look at the problem is with the kids, rather than starting with, let's have a look right here. Let's see what's going on inside here.
Let's put all the distractions to one side, and let's sit down and let's talk to our children. And just spend time. And even if they don't want to talk at the moment, let's just spend some time. My son's classic for that. Just kind of sit a little bit, and we talk about what he's worried about and stressed, and you just connect. You connect rather than being the snappy. You snap because something's happened, it's wound you up, and you don't, it's hit your values or whatever it might be. And I think I think the more you can catch yourself doing it, the less likely you are to keep that going, I think.
Yeah, and that's the holy grail, right? And just listening to, and the kind of language we're using about parenting, for some dads listening might be saying, what the heck are they talking about? And at the same time, it's still helpful to hear men talk this way about parenting and engaging with your kids, because for the old outdated model, it's, well, women take care of that, women do that kind of thing. So I've got my own stuff going on. I just almost encourage the listener to see this as opening up some new doors, maybe, and just to hear things in a different way, which leads me a great bridge back into that identity piece for you, Ian, that you had to let go of for what you thought is expected of men as you became a stay-at-home dad. Can you drill down a bit more into that for us? What did you let go of? What did that look and feel like for you?
Yeah, I think it felt unnerving. I think in many ways is that you get used to your identity to a certain extent being built around your work persona and your job in many cases, and I was 32 or 33, I guess, and I was a management consultant. That comes with baggage, and it comes with with jokes and about being overpaid and telling people what they already know. But it also comes with a lot of kudos. And you work with great companies, and you learn those skills around influencing people who you don't have a direct line management responsibility for. So you can't just tell them to do things because it just doesn't work, which is it's quite a useful skill set for parenting generally, I think. But I clearly remember people saying, well, what do you do? Classic questions. What do you do? It's like, well, I'm more. And actually, when you think about it, we're all more than what we do. We are, we're a variety of, we're who we are. We're the person we want to be. Our aspirations, our values. We're much more than that. But I remember sort of saying, well, I'm a management consultant, because that was the most recent type of career that I'd had, and it'd been for, I hadn't always done that, but it had been for the sort of preceding kind of 7 years, I suppose. But I clearly wasn't doing that. And so what I found for me, what was really useful is I had something else. I had something else around identity and success, I think, that really mattered. So I've spent a lot of, I'm a big hockey man. Hockey's my main sport. Cricket's there as well. I played cricket and hockey when I was younger. When I went to uni, I kind of carried on with hockey. Didn't play any cricket anymore. So I played a lot of hockey, and then I found I could umpire. So I could umpire hockey, and that's what I wanted to do. And so throughout the time that when Freya was very little, and I was getting promoted through the umpiring ranks, and I wanted to and I think I was promoted like 2 weeks after she was born. I was promoted from Division 2 of the South to Division 1 of the South, and ultimately I ended up as a National League umpire, and I did that for 4 seasons. But I had this sort of thread of success and something I could work, and kudos, and that sense of, you get a name on the back of the shirt, you get your surname on the back of the shirt, which is a nice touch until people start using it and obviously shouting about it and going, "Oi, Dinwiddie, you don't know what you're doing. Call that decision," whatever. We don't get big crowds in hockey, but you certainly get. So you can certainly hear when someone uses your name in vain. But it was about this sort of status. So I had these kind of, and I think that really helped me. Was that on the one hand, I put aside this consultancy job, and I don't want people to think that I was on this kind of fast track consultancy. I wasn't. I was good at what I was doing, but I wasn't driven to be successful in that kind of career. I hadn't sort of found my purpose in some ways. I hadn't found the real thing that I wanted to do. But I had this kind of, on a Saturday, I would go away and I'd be assessed, I'd be coached. And I was and certainly at National League, getting into a high performance environment where people are being, some of the players have been paid to be there. And I've umpired some very good games as a result. But that thread of sort of success and achievement almost replaced that working persona to a certain extent. And then I went back into consultancy on a 2-day-a-week basis, 3-day-a-week, so really flexible stuff. But that was but I had 9 months with Freya when it was just the 2 of us. And then later on, I did the same thing full time. But it kind of this portfolio, this kind of blend, really, I guess. But yeah, having something that I could almost hang on to that had a status symbol around it was something that was really important to me.
I am a working from home dad, so we work about 3 days. I work about 3 days a week here, and then I'm with the family, and then individually with the kids. And when I've transitioned from looking a bit uncomfortable in saying that to somebody, to being proud of it, then back to feeling uncomfortable. Well, I should be growing a business because that's actually, at least half of my time is decided between Kerry and I to do that. To, am I investing enough with the kids? And then being proud again to be at home as much. So just a whole mixed bag as I've been letting go of who I thought I should be and what a picture of Ben Lepier should and shouldn't look like, blah, blah, blah. Can you share a bit around that topic, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, it's that, I think it goes back to sort of societal assumptions around sort of quite binary breadwinning and caring responsibilities, which is absurd when you think about the fact that, I think it's something like 75% of women with dependent children are in work. And so, heterosexual couples, any couple really, it's more likely that both of them are working in some form or other. And so, life is much more complicated and much more of a blend of ways of working and structuring our lives than it was a generation ago, where, ultimately, actually, you look at, you go back a generation, I guess, in many cases, women weren't going to university, so they weren't in the frame for good, better jobs and long-term jobs. And actually, generationally, when university is slightly more women than men, I think, coming through, and so it's I'm losing my train of thought now. So I think, but you have these blends, and I've sort of owned it. I'm aware that I work about 25 hours a week, and I understand the constraints around my time, and I've stopped beating myself up about things I can't do and saying no, and just saying, all right, I'm going to build something. It's going to take me longer than if I was a 20-year-old, 25-year-old who maybe wants to invest kind of 80 odd hours into their business. And it's become a really important and rewarding part of my life, is the fact that I get to spend the time with the kids at their swimming lessons, and I do all the food and stuff. And lockdown actually has been really good for us as a family, because my wife hasn't been at work, where she's been working long hours and commuting and not being home. We, the two of us had lunch together. We always had lunch together when the kids were homeschooling, and we've been around each other a lot more. Certainly my wife's been around a lot more, which has been nice as a family aspect. But yeah, I think it's kind of the emotional cycle of change, isn't it? Kubler-Ross, and it's sort of like, to start with, you're sort of mourning and grieving, and you don't know how to, this change in circumstances you're struggling with, and eventually get to a stage where you own it, and you say, well, this is who I am, and this is important to me. But I don't think it comes easily necessarily.
Yeah, and I just want to open that up around what is our definition of success, and the truth is that can vary from person to person, but building a perhaps more modern approach of, I want to be at home, I want to know my kids, it's not just one person's job. And I also don't want, if I'm a busy working dad, I don't want being with my kids to be a to-do list. My version of success was this guy who's out at the front, revered by everyone. Everyone just sort of bows down when he walks through the hotel, earns lots of money, got a nice car. All of my definition of, this is just my interpretation back then, before I had an amount of personal work, was about what people said about me. And being revered as much as possible, having as much money as possible. I don't even know why, just for the sake of having lots of money, right?
Million, anything ending is nice round number, maybe $1 million a year or
million a year. Just whatever. And if anyone ever touched that for me, that nerve, why do you want $1 million? Well, and I'd always fudge an answer, not that you can actually manage a budget well and actually live really happily on 18 grand a year. It has to be $1 million, right? Yeah. And that was just yet another thing to inflate my sense of worth and to cover over this huge gaping hole I had of Ben's not enough as he is, without having all of those things. So just living this crazy way of at any cost forcing that version of success to happen. So what was your original version of success, Ian? I know you've touched on it, and how has that changed for you now?
I think I used to beat myself up. Well, no, I do. I know I used to beat myself up that I wasn't ambitious enough. So I realized when I first started getting into coaching, I trained with the Coaching Academy, and they do a kind of 2-day weekend sort of, taster session. And during that 2-day that taster session, which is 5-6 years ago, I realized that I was judging my success, my work success, against a really narrow cross-section of friends and acquaintances, often friends on LinkedIn. So I was looking at going, global head of, or department vice president. That was kind of a classic one. And friends of mine who have been in some ways very single-minded about their careers, in some ways lucky, and in some ways, combinations of. And I was kind of like, well, why don't I want this? I don't actually. I never really wanted that. which is easy to say because that wasn't the path I was on, in some ways. So it's kind of convenient. But I used to worry that I wasn't ambitious enough, and I think that actually the issue was that I hadn't quite found the right fit of something I really wanted to do, and because money, we were comfortably off when I was growing up. But I went to a private school because my great aunt never married. She was of the World War I generation of women who never married, and so she put some money into. She had money that my brother and I inherited in a trust fund, and my parents spent it on school fees. We lived in a semi-detached house until we had to move to a bungalow with mum's mobility. So it was never. I always had this idea of being comfortable, so I was never driven by needing to earn lots because I got used to having lots. I didn't have, and also we didn't have, we never struggled for money, but then we never went on foreign holidays either. So I didn't have that kind of desire of I need to provide a better standard of living. So kind of caught in this middle ground where quite easy to sort of drift along in some ways. So my version of success, I guess, definitely to be seen and revered and seen as an authority. I think I've realized that's really important to me, is to be seen and respected, and whether that's for the kind of inspiring dad stuff, and when you do webinars and things like that, and whether that is sort of really, really key. And my doorbell's gone, which means can we just kind of check the doorbell?
Go, bud. Go.
2 seconds.
Yeah, no problem. It's bound to be Amazon, knowing stay.
Oh, but my wife's just gone there. But when you're just distracted, like, I mean, if I don't go and get the door, I'll just distract me.
It's bound to be Amazon, knowing stay-at-home dads like you and I. That's the only person that rings the doorbell at our house.
Definitely. So we I'll give it a little pause so we can cut it back in. Where was I up to? Money. So we didn't grow up sort of wanting for stuff, and also we didn't grow up with particularly sort of lavish lifestyles. So money was never really a thing, but the sort of status of being looked up to. And I think that's where the hockey umpiring came in. I really wanted to get to the level where, you were at the top. I got to tier 2 in the sort of national sort of pyramid, and that sort of status of, let's be honest, it's only really status within hockey in so many ways. Like hockey players go, oh, you're a proper umpire. There's, that kind of, but that sort of sense of, but also that sense of helping people. So it was never, success was never defined by money per se. More about, I guess, growth and development. I mean, we've made some financial decisions in terms of kind of kids schooling versus building an extension that would reflect that house is fine. We want to do stuff, but
What stuck out for me was your definition when compared to that very tiny little cross section of people you knew. So almost how we do this is almost in a childlike way, just fudge it together from stuff we've seen so far that we think works. And let's come on to sort of parenting and parents that want to redefine this, Ian. What is your advice and guidance to dads that are that busy parent, that busy work person, business owner, and want a better quality of time and connection to their kids at home? How do you help them? How do you start about the first couple of steps to helping them manage that work-life balance better?
I think it starts off with assessing where you actually are. So I like using a wheel of life exercise where you assess, 8 categories of your life and say, actually, where am I on this? Am I, how satisfied am I in these areas? And you start to see where you're really satisfied and where you're not. I think that's really useful for benchmarking how happy you are ultimately, and where you want to sort of focus. But also, I really enjoy exercises like Be, Do, Have. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do and what do you want to have? And start off with a big list and start to whittle it down to the things that are genuinely important to you. Because as you sort of alluded to, Ben, around that working on yourself, sometimes it's easy to say, I am at this point and well, where do I go next? So let's just take a step back. So I always like my clients to step back, reflect on what's actually important to them. And then we start to tie those be, do, and have into, and often you find that for a lot of clients, it's it's the be that really matters, not the doing. Or sometimes I have, but doing experiences, going on great holidays, that's important. But often it's about the be. What kind of person do they want to be? And once you've got clear on that sort of thing, and you're clear in your own mind, then that opens up the possibility of having really honest conversations with the people around you, with your partner, about actually the way we're living our life is not, I'm not happy with this, and this is why, because I realize these are the things that are important. Can we have a conversation about how we're doing things? Because I think it's very easy for men to get trapped in that expectation about breadwinning, about success. We don't take extended leave, so we don't sort of in the same way that mums do, and so the expectations will provide. And sometimes that, and really importantly about success, is that if that is your version of success as an individual and as a family, especially as a family, then go for it. I mean, I'm not going to, I will never tell a client how to live their life. I will hopefully shine a light on a process that will help them to understand what that path is. And then once you can't, once you've understood that, you can then have better quality conversation, I think, with your partner, so you can end up with a shared purpose.
Yeah, I think you've just nailed it for me. So many clients we speak through here, they've picked up a role early on, whether that was a stereotypical role or a role that suited them at the time. Life's evolved and they've become so identified with that role, which is perfectly natural. No criticism here. But what worked 7 years ago is absolutely not working for them right now. And what people tend to do to rectify that is just work harder and do more in a hope that that's going to solve the problem. So you nailed it with that conversation as a family, like what's right for us as a family. What we foster here as much as possible is that open dialogue, open conversation, and open a book at any chapter to a particular subject that needs to be constantly revisited. Like, how's homeschooling going? How's the business going? How's everyone feeling about blank? We're just about to go off on a UK tour and we're selling up. Always including the kids and letting them have their say, even though we don't let them dictate a lot of choices, right?
Yeah. Give them two choices.
Yeah, give just two.
Two choices. Not, they feel like they got a choice, but they're two choices that both work for you.
Do you want to brush?
Don't give an open book.
Do you want to brush your teeth with your toothbrush or mine? It's up to you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a kind of leading question that you just don't use in coaching, but with kids you've got to, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's almost the last stopping point here, Ian. Is how do you create that sort of nurturing conversation environment at home that you and I know is really important to have with each one of your children and your wife and you as a group, as a family? Can you just shed a bit of light on that for us?
I think it is quantity of time in some ways rather than quality of time. I think sometimes we kid ourselves that the quality of the time is what really matters. And it can be, but I think spending time one-on-one with your children, each of them, with your partner, and open the coach, effectively asking them coaching questions. So it's something we did actually in the last couple of days. So I never ask how did school go. I'll ask, who did you play with today? Things like that. And so what was the best thing about today? And just this kind of, since lockdown, since kids have been back at school, my son's kind of struggled a little bit with some of the school stuff, in part because he's a little bit bored because they're revisiting stuff that he can do. And so and a few times he said, I don't want to go to school. And he's never been like that before. So my wife came up with a good idea, and we've got him doing it for the last couple of days, mini journaling. So he comes home from school, and because at the end of the day, so Tuesday morning he could be like, I don't want to go to school, but Monday afternoon he's like, oh, school was great, we did this, we did that, we did the other. It's like, okay, we're going to get you to write this down. So he's got a little reward chart, so he has to write down each day, and we've only done 2 days, so I can't really say it's an unqualified success, but he'll write down things that went well and things that he didn't like so much, and he'll write those down, and so we can refer back to them. So if he's going, I don't like school anymore, it's like, well, here's your coaching, it's classic kind of stuff, here's your coaching journal. He's got a little something he can reflect on and say, actually, you did enjoy it because this is what you wrote down. So can you remember what was good about it? Yeah. And he tells us join those dots. So it's not just he's woken up in a bad mood, don't fancy school much. because he's not, he can do school. School's great. Actually, his struggle is maybe that he finds some things a little bit easier than his contemporaries. But this way, a little bit of mini coaching, a bit of self-coaching. So yeah, I think it's good.
I love that. Just rather than being that I can be that mindless parent drilling in the same piece of information that is just not going in for love nor money, and handing them back that level of responsibility of beginning to understand who they are, beginning to understand how they feel. And hey, today you don't like that thing, but it's really important you go. Let's revisit the times that you have enjoyed it and what was it you were focusing on that time. So what a beautiful approach to parenting.
Nice. And again, as we said before, all the credit goes to Lisa on that one.
It's always Lisa and Kerry.
Right? It is Kerry, exactly. Exactly. The only credit I take is marrying well.
Yes, exactly. Ian, before we come on to the quick fire questions, can you just tell us where to go if we want to find out a little bit more about what you do? Yes.
So if you go to inspiringdads.co.uk, then that's the hub of everything. So people can connect to me through Facebook, through LinkedIn in particular. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. There are blog posts, there's content like this I've done for other people, webinars, that kind of thing you can have a look at. It's podcasts, as you mentioned before, Lockdown Dads. And if you are, and this kind of it fits from men and women equally, mums and dads, is that you can download a free download all about creating purpose, which touches on some of the things that we do have. So there's 5 easy steps to understand your purpose in life and understand and become more authentic and align, especially if you're feeling a little bit stressed about how things are, then you can download that, join the mailing list and go from there, really.
Brilliant. I'll put that in the bio. Thank you, Ian. That's been great. Here is your quick fire round, right? So by the way, listeners, you are allowed to judge Ian based on his answers, but I won't. I
don't even know what these are yet.
Podcast or Audible?
Podcast.
Hugs or time?
Hugs.
Vaccine or no vaccine?
Vaccine.
Meat or veg?
Meat.
Umpire or hockey player?
Umpire.
Trump or Boris Johnson?
Oh God, Johnson.
West Country or anywhere else?
Oh, West Country.
West Country.
Still, that's where my heart is. I may not live there, but that's in my heart.
West Country all the way, buddy. Hey, thank you, Ian. That's been absolutely brilliant. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us just to part company here? What one top tip for dads before?
Yeah, I think one top tip for dads. I think it's to understand about mental load and equality at home. But look up the term mental load. I think it's a really important aspect of equality at home, which makes everyone happier.
Brilliant. And equality at home, actually speaking to your partner about what you actually want it to look like. Genius, having a conversation. Like who would have thought, right? Bless your heart, buddy. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much to your wife and your family making this possible today. And have a great day, buddy.
Thanks, Bennett. Thanks, Bennett. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
See you, bud.